Completely unnecessary birth certificate news now. And Andy, the Kenyan President of the United States, successfully faked and released his fake American birth certificate this week to the relief of everyone who's asleep in the face of the truth. That is how many internet posts reported the re-release of Barack Obama's Hawaiian certificate of live birth this week. And the issue of whether or not the president, who was definitely born in the United States, was definitely born here or not, even though he definitely was, has been stoked up recently by Donald Trump in his ongoing will I, won't I dalliance with running for president himself. So after the birth certificate was released, you might have expected Donald Trump to eat some humble pie. But if you expected that, then you're clearly not familiar with Senor Trump, because he's very much allergic to that particular brand of pie. In fact, moments after the birth certificate was released, Trump landed in New Hampshire and went straight to an impromptu press conference where the first things out of his mouth were, "Today, I'm very proud of myself, because I've accomplished something that no one else has been able to accomplish." Now, to be honest, I think that's how he starts every day. I think he looks into the mirror and repeats that to himself 3 times before brushing his teeth and ironing his hair.
Well, I think the thing that he manages to accomplish every day is seeing himself in the mirror and not screaming. So, fair play to him. No one else can do that.
He then went on to talk at length about how he'd just turned up in a helicopter. And what a helicopter it was. It was black and red, Andy, the best colour for any helicopter in the late 1980s. And it also had Trump emblazoned on the side of it. He said he was honoured to have played such a big role in hopefully getting rid of this issue. Now we can have a look, he said. We can have a look at it to see if it's real. He's incredible, Andy. His capacity for bullshit would either make him the perfect president or the perfect landfill site. I just can't work out which yet.
Such a fine line, so often. I'm fascinated by this term birtherism, which makes it sound like a branch of philosophy, a school of thought that holds that where conclusive evidence verifiably exists to prove a known fact, that evidence can be disproved if it is repeatedly and groundlessly rubbished through a sufficient number of media outlets. And that basically, I think, is what John Stuart Mill would have ended up saying if he hadn't popped his clogs, John. He was basically heading in that direction.
President Obama himself had alluded to Donald Trump during his quick press conference to release the birth certificate, referring to him as a carnival barker. And to that I say this: that's future President Carnival Barker to you. Have some respect.
There was an article about him on the Al Jazeera website in which the journalist described Donald Trump as, quotes, the living embodiment of every degrading aspect of American culture.
He would take that as a compliment.
But, I mean, that does. You know, when you read those words, John, and you think of his impending presidential bid, the living embodiment of every degrading aspect of American culture, he is going to be very hard to beat, John, with that sure behind him. That is vote-winning stuff.
That should be his campaign slogan. Get that across a bumper sticker.
It's worked before, twice in the last 3 elections.
Trump now also wants the president to release his college records as well. And, you know, I guess President Obama could do that too, but, you know, where does this end exactly? Do we want his intimate medical records as well? Is that enough transparency? Do we want to insert a microscopic camera into his anus just so we can have a look around and check that he's not harbouring any Muslim extremists up there? Is that too much to ask in the pursuit of national security, Andy? And if Obama refuses to do it, the only question is, what's he hiding up there then? Just let us put a camera up your arse and prove that you have nothing to hide.
I will not accept him as my president, John, until I have seen verifiable footage of his mother and his father humping without using any protection. On the appropriate date in whenever it was. 1960 or whatever.
Trump, obviously, should also now be subjected to exactly the same level of scrutiny. America should get to see all of Trump's financial records. They should get to see what's underneath his profoundly unsettling hair. My guess is that there's a tattoo of his own face up there. And we should get to see his internet history as well. In fact, that truly is the most telling thing that any of us could demand in the name of transparency from a future leader. True transparency means everyone should have to release their personal internet history. Because I bet that Donald Trump Googles his own name a lot. I bet that's 60% of his searches on the internet. I'd also love to see President Obama's internet history. I think it would be very illustrative to see the internet history of all presidents from now on. If Obama ever placed an online order for ping pong balls, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see if he's ever online commentating on a forum about a Jonas Brothers blogs under a fake name. I'd like to see if he was hacking into his daughter's Facebook accounts to check what they're up to. I'd like to see if he ever looked up the batting average of Jason Bay against left-handed pitchers and how long he spent looking at that page. I'd like to know if he'd ever seen a video of a skateboarder taking a huge nut shot from a telephone pole and how many times he'd then rewatched that clip. I think that would tell you more about a president's character than any questions about policy. In fact, Andy, I think one debate per presidential cycle should just involve a moderator pulling out a piece of internet history at random from a candidate and simply saying, explain this. Well, that's a good question. I guess I was intrigued to see whether or not Natalie Portman had ever done a nude scene in a movie. Very well. And your opponent? Explain this. That was not a serious inquiry. I just wanted to know, hypothetically, whether they made female SS uniforms in my size.
God, was that? I tell you, was that Nixon and Lyndon Johnson?
Good spot, Andy. Good spot. Karl Rove, the top political advisor to President George Bush, and total qualified. He has called Trump a joke candidate. But I'll tell you what, Karl. I'll tell you what it's nice to have once in a while. Jokes, Karl. They're fun. Sometimes they're not in great taste, sure. And sometimes they're completely pointless. But they're nice to laugh at occasionally. And the truth is, Trump would clearly make a catastrophic president. But he could yet offer one of the greatest, funniest, most ridiculous presidential runs in American history. And it would be so sad if he denied the world that kind of pure, uncomplicated joy.
So he doesn't have all the classic characteristics of a presidential candidate. He's had his worth estimated at $3 billion, but also has... he's danced the dance with bankruptcy on a number of occasions.
He has tangoed, yeah.
He's also appeared in Home Alone 2. He apparently failed to vote in New York primary elections for over 20 years, so massive democracy fan. He also owns the Miss Universe franchise and sells his own brand of vodka.
That's right.
So, are any of those compatible with being president?
Well, I've got some more facts for you here, Andy. Trump does not shake hands because he has a fear of germs. Now, that is something of a handicap to running for office. Is he also allergic to babies' heads? Because there is nothing looks more elitist than spraying your hands with disinfectant immediately after touching a potential voter. Here's another fact. On April the 7th of this year, Trump filed to trademark the phrase "success by Trump" for use in selling, and I quote, cologne, perfume, fragrances, aftershave lotions, skin moisturiser, shampoo, conditioner, deodorant, soaps for hand, face and body, body powder, bath oil, bath gel, bath salts and bubble bath. I do hope that in anticipation of his presidential run, Andy, he's also trademarked failure by Trump as well. Because if he hasn't, I'm tempted to. And while I'm at it, I might also trademark bankruptcy by Trump too. In case I ever want to make a shower gel. As you mentioned, he already has Trump the fragrance and Trump vodka. And again, let's in the future now make sure that every potential presidential candidate has their own line of fragrances. It just makes sense. You can tell a lot about a candidate from whether they like to use base notes of sandalwood or not.
Indecision by Calvin Coolidge.
I think the most telling thing you can know about Donald Trump as a man comes from this exchange he had a couple of days ago in New Hampshire, which I read about in an article. I think it really gets across the kind of human being you're dealing with in a very concise, very compact way. I quote, "Donald Trump spent a few minutes shaking hands at a Portsmouth diner, but spent little time in conversation. Passing by a table of older men, he waved and said, 'Why aren't you at work?'" Already a great manner for people there, Andy. Did he whack them with a stick as well? Or hold a gold handkerchief over his nose as he spoke to them? Anyway, it goes on. "We're retired. answered the group of former workers at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. Don't touch Medicare, right? Trump said, moving on without waiting for an answer. Trump 2012, Andy. It would be too fun for him not to do this.
I do think, John, that having watched the royal family this morning and feeling a fairly overwhelming surge of republicanism coming up through my body.
Yeah.
Not so much, I've got nothing against William and K-Dog themselves, but it's more the coverage of it. And it does show that there are some things we're not so good at in Britain as a nation anymore. For example, manufacturing or running an economy. But there are some things we are good at, and one of those is polishing small bits of brass. And I think that has shown we are possibly world leaders in that.
Yep.
I guess it wasn't such a great occasion if you're not a fan of highly polished small bits of brass and inherited privilege. But I think what it did show, John, is that when you look at that royal wedding and then you look at Donald Trump, there is only one preferable option to that. I'm not sure there would have been quite the same number of people on the streets to see Donald Trump high-fiving himself in Westminster Abbey.